What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today with a new card show recap video. I will admit these have been more infrequent than I would like them to be. That's just because I haven't been sending up that as many shows, but it's something I definitely want to get back into more as the summer comes into fold here in 2022. I've always loved setting up at shows and even just walking around shows and buying things, and want to make sure I up my game with these recap videos as the year progresses. So that's definitely a goal of mine going forward. But the good news is that today I do have one of those videos, and it is for the Louisville Derby card show from Saturday, March 20th. That should say March 19th, not March 20th, because today is March 20th when I am releasing this video. So apologies about that. But anyways, this is one of my favorite shows to go to just because it's always a good crowd. I have a few people there who I've met and become friends with. Uh, just kind of doing this, over the years now, you tend to run into the same people. And then there were a lot of new faces this time around too, which was cool. So it's nice to, make new friends and reconnect with old ones as well. Overall, this show, in the context of where it is located, was pretty much par for the course. In fact, where it was located will tie into one of the pickups when we get to that portion of the video. But overall, this is a very basketball heavy show. And not even just like the ultra modern basketball, even throwing it back some more. Being in Louisville, it's about 2 hours, maybe closer to an hour and a half outside of downtown Cincinnati. So you still get quite a bit of interest in the Reds and the Bengals because there are no Big Four pro teams in the state of Kentucky. But there is definitely a ton of basketball interest because of the connection, of course, in Louisville, a very good historically basketball program there, not so much in recent years, but with the Louisville Cardinals, and then one of the most popular and rabid fan bases out there for college basketball with the Kentucky Wildcats, who play about an hour east of Louisville. So typically it is a very basketball heavy show, and that was definitely the case today. But most of my pickups were actually vintage. So why don't we talk about said pickups? Really, sales wise, it was a bit slow for me. I only made one like true sale where there was no other cards involved in terms of a trade. I did make a few trades, and that is what I'm really going to have to go into here. And this first trade was for two basketball cards that I had been eyeing some of these before in the past because I really do love these cards, and that would be, of course, some of the case hits that are out there. You guys know I love my case hits, especially the downtowns. So, by the way, I have my new card stands here. I typically use these for whatnot, but I figured I would bust them out for this video too, although they don't really fit too well on screen there. You can kind of see the card without the assigned grade. So I'm just going to hold these on camera here. But this is a John Wall. I'm just going to bump the camera up slightly, so apologies for that. Professional quality videos here at TripleCrown24. John Wall Cornerstones, which was shockingly, it didn't have a very long lifespan as a solo product for NBA. Now it is one of those where the hits have been put into the Chronicles release, but there are no like base cards in Chronicles NBA for the Cornerstones product, which is a shame because I really thought it was a very well-made product and one that was very popular. So it is very surprising to see things like Flux, which I do love Flux in terms of the designs and that, along with your recons of the world that have kind of been able to upgrade themselves to the solo release instead of being in Chronicles, whereas this is more so relegated towards that for just the hits. Just little aside there. But these downtowns don't necessarily use a foil pattern. Like, is there little pockets of foil? Yeah, you can see here these little red illuminations do have some foil on them, and there's a few little scattered things throughout. But for the most part, they don't look like the downtowns that we kind of see now out of 1-in-1. More on that in a minute. But I love these a lot. They're really cool. They remind me of the original From Downtowns, which were the main inspiration for this set that we've kind of come to know and love today. So again, we were in Kentucky basketball country. I know that, Louisville is not the same as Kentucky. That's two completely different teams and fan bases, but there's a lot of UK Wildcat fans that do make the journey westward to, frequent this show. And there's still plenty of them throughout the state, really, regardless of where you go. So John Wall, of course, was a fantastic player for Kentucky back in the day. His NBA career, I would say, has fallen maybe a bit short of expectations. He's had a really, really good career, just not a great career, in my opinion. But this is probably one of the cheapest downtowns that you will find out there. And saw it in the SGC 10. Thought that the guy was asking a little bit too little for it, so I went ahead and made the trade for it. The other piece of the trade coming back to me was the downtown that you may be more familiar with. This is out of now 2 years ago, 1-1, and it's an Anthony Davis. It received the PSA 9 here. I took a look at it, and there's really not too much that I could say is like wrong with it per se. I don't know exactly what it is that made it a 9. Maybe it's like a little bit off centered, but sometimes it's just, as our friend Nolan would like to say, a bad spin. But I looked this over for quite a bit because these cards do come encased. It's direct from Panini. Does that mean that you're guaranteed a 10? No, it doesn't. That's a myth that if you believe that, you really need to get that out of your head because that is definitely not true. But this one right here, it's got the city of Los Angeles in the background. Some cool little things. I just love like all the little references here. Like there's a Hollywood sign in the background that says Lakers instead of Hollywood. I think that's just neat. And you have like Beverly Hills there. On the John Wall, it's a DC one. So you see it's kind of got like this USA theme there with the magic wand for the Wizards, which is really cool. You have like the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, Capitol building in the background. I've seen these have like the White House before. So the DC ones, they always have plenty of source material to make them look cool. And this one is no exception. So what did I give up for this one? Well, if you flash back to one of my previous card show recap videos, you'll remember my Juan Soto blue auto that was based off of the 2016 Bowman release, which was where his first Bowman was. Well, I got that back from PSA when I came back from Dallas, and it received the mint 9. Now, since that one has come back, I saw a sale on that card for $3.99 in a PSA 9. It was the refractor version out of 50. Mine, of course, is the blue out of 25. Now, how much of a multiplier is there? I don't really know. Do I think that my blue looks better than the refractor? Personally, for me, yeah, but that might be because I really like the color blue. Would that really make a difference to someone else? Debatable. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer with that by any means. So with these two cards here, I of course picked up that X-Fractor at the Dallas show too, and this is going to sound very out of character for me, especially with how you guys know I used to super collect, but I don't like having too many big cards of the same player at the same time. Like I like to have a bunch of different stuff that you don't necessarily see every day. Are these downtowns super, 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 super rare? No. Are they rare? Yes, they're definitely rare. Is an autograph out of 25 rare? Yes. And did I really want to give up that card? Not unless there was a deal that really made sense. But this one to me was just one that made sense. There was a little bit more that was added into the deal as well. But this is really the core of it here. And this will be the difference maker for either side. The gentleman who I made a discussion with, he was actually getting into baseball for the first time. So we actually had a really good conversation. He collected baseball cards back in the day. I would guess he was right around my age. But we were kind of talking about, I was telling him like what I like to look for personally in terms of baseball, and showed him a few different cards. That Soto was the one that he kind of picked out among them that he wanted to try to go for. And these were the two cards he had that I really wanted. So I'm glad that we were able to make a deal. And again, just one of those times where you make a new friend in the hobby, and you hope that they remember that, you hope that you get to see him again. But if he is watching this, I won't use any names here. But thank you again for taking the time to stop and talk with me. I do greatly appreciate it, and for making the deal. So there you have it. I made a couple like small little trades, nothing that I'm going to really show off on camera. I'm actually preparing some of those cards potentially to use in a PSA submission I have going off. So They're in a stack with a bunch of other stuff I need to take care of right now, so I don't have those readily available. But I only made one true purchase in addition to my one sale that I made. And I'm going to put that up on camera now. It is a 2018 Prism Football Silver Prism. So I'm going to be covering baseball, football, and basketball in today's video. You'll see the baseball here momentarily. But for those of you who don't know, when it comes to silver prisms, are they tough to hit? Not really. If you look at most year's releases, there are a couple of exceptions. Of course, when print runs were lower in the early part of the 2010s, there were less of them out there. The 2012 silvers probably have the lowest print run of all, that I would argue. 2013 is still fairly low, but they did produce a lot more 2013 than 2012. And then you come to 2018 when Panini just kind of, for whatever reason, decided, hey, we're going to lessen the print run on these. I forget if it's 100 or 300 of these silvers that were made per card in the set, but it is an extremely low number. So this Sutton last summer was actually selling around like $60 to $75, and that just goes to show you how tough these silvers are and how much of a premium people are willing to pay for them. So whenever I see these, I will immediately, regardless of the player, check to see how much they want on it. This one I didn't think was unreasonable. I forget if it was $10 or $15 is what I ended up paying for this. But what I'm seeing right now, I'm going to talk about this more in the takeaways section of the video. But a lot of things are being priced based on what people think will happen rather than what has actually happened going forward. And of course, there's a new sheriff in town in Denver in terms of their quarterback situation. They've traded for Russell Wilson. So there's a lot of talk about the players surrounding Wilson in that offense. And that was a big reason why I picked this up for the price I did. Not to mention that, this price that I got this for, you're talking a very low percentage or a fraction of what they were selling for last summer. I get that things were much different back then, but this is one of those that was just, for the price, I hadn't really bought anything. I'll take a flyer on this for the price it was at. Why not? I've also always liked Sutton. I think he's just been a solid player, even in college at SMU when he was a Mustang. So that was that. Last few pickups. This was a partial cash, partial trade again. I had traded some lower end vintage cards, as well as my 1959 Topps Bob Gibson, which I didn't even make a video for. It was a whatnot purchase. And to give you the context behind it, if you go on my Twitter at it's Triple Crown, ITS Triple Crown, you'll see a picture of it. I put it up there. It was a PSA 3. And I'm going to actually rephrase that as it was in a PSA 3 holder, because I don't believe that it should have actually been a PSA 3. It was one of those that was in an older slab. And just looking at it, I was very surprised that it didn't have a miscut qualifier. Even if you bumped it to a 4 and gave it a miscut qualifier, I would say that's probably pretty accurate. But even if it was a 3 miscut, it wouldn't surprise me. And the corners weren't very good. The registration was fantastic. There were no real major surface issues either. But for me, centering is the big thing, and it was much more off-centered than what it appeared to be on the screen on whatnot. And of course, I'm bidding on it from either a computer or a phone screen. It's maybe difficult to see, especially in a live environment, what exactly the card looks like. But when I got it in hand, I got to say I was disappointed in it. To no fault of the seller. It was me not looking at it a little bit more closely and just being more aggressive with my bidding on it. So one of my goals was to either sell the card or to try to trade into something that I thought was more fairly graded, or something that I thought was just better for me to have. So some cash, a few $100 cash, some low-end vintage, and giving up the Gibson later, I was able to acquire these 5 cards. Now, the first 2 are for my friend Mike of Baseball Collector. If you've watched his mail day videos where he says he's gotten stuff from me, then you will be well familiar with the fact that I have the login to his PSA set registry. And oftentimes, if I am looking to buy vintage cards or bundle things together and I see a vintage card, I will double check to see if he has it or not. And just by the sheer number of times I have done that, I've gotten a pretty good sense of what he is missing and what he is not missing. we actually had made a deal the night before, and he told me to take a list with me of the stuff that he wanted to look for. And right now, he is working on finishing up his 1970 top set and his 1965 top set. So there were two Hall of Famers that he was looking to get slabbed. And I think all the cards he's missing still of 1970 are Hall of Famers, except for Pete Rose, which was one of the cards we were looking for. So I go to the show, and typically I like to not talk about them because I like to have him like get to show them off for the first time, just because some of our audience kind of overlaps. But I'm going to make the exception today. I do want to show them just because I thought they were really cool, and they work into the story of the deal too. That's why I'm going to show them today. So sorry, Mike, I'm stealing your thunder a bit here, but I promise I won't focus too much on these. So the first one up is this 1965 Topps Willie Stargell, and if you look at this card, it is just it's just beautiful, man. Look at the centering on this thing. 65 Topps should not be this well centered. If you've seen them before, this is just one of those that you look at it and you wonder why it's a 5, because it is so unbelievably beautiful. I'm not going to just sit here and try to examine why it's not. It's a beautiful card, and this is Mike's card now, so I don't want to take anything away from it. Let's just call it a beautiful card and call it a day, shall we? So that was one of the two Hall of Famers he needed. He also needed this card here, and we saw this one in there. I thought this one was incredibly cheap based on the sticker price. We were actually able to get it for a little bit less than sticker price once I figured out what I had into everything, so to speak. It is a 1970 Topps celebrating the Miracle Mets. We're number one. Just kind of a bunch of dudes in the locker room, right? Nolan Ryan is on this card, and this is one of the ones that Mike needed for his set. It's graded as well. These are the types of cards that typically you're not going to see graded too much with the cost of grading today, regardless of which company you're sending it into, unless it's some unicorn example where you're getting, 9s or 10s, 8s if it's something that is very exceptional. But a lot of those types of cards, it just isn't worth it for a lot of people to grade them. Will that change in the future? I think so. Over the next year, we'll see more of those start to get graded. But for the time being, not so much. But both of these were fantastic examples. And it kind of led me into a conversation with this dealer because we were talking, I was telling him, like, I guess he was kind of trying to get a feel for what I was going to do with the cards too. And I told him that I'm a fellow dealer too. It's not something that I try to hide or anything. So we talked about that, and he gave me some compliments. He gave me some tips as well, which is always fantastic. Rather than saying what I do as a dealer, I would rather learn from someone who's been doing it a long time, and this guy has been doing it. I've seen him since I started doing this. I've just never made a deal with him, which is odd because he always has fantastic vintage, and he always has very reasonable prices, and is always willing to work with you. Just a great individual overall, and he's I've seen how he interacts with his customers. He is a role model for me as someone who is still, I would say, rather inexperienced as a dealer. I've only been doing this a couple of years, which in the grand scheme of things, it may sound like an eternity to some, but really some of these guys, they've been in the game for decades now. And I definitely look up to a lot of these guys and see what they've been doing to sustain this for as long as they have and build up, in a sense, the collections that they have as a subsequent result of their dealing. So we kind of talked about things, we kind of laid our cards out on the table, both figuratively and literally, trying to make this deal. So I told him that, I was trying to get these cards for Mike, and there was another friend of mine who I was trying to work out a deal for on a card. And that this friend ultimately passed on the card. But I went ahead and picked out the things I wanted. We came to a deal. The Gibson was involved in the trade, so that was fantastic. I know I'm going way on with this story, but what do you expect? This is how it always goes on this channel. So what did I actually get back for myself? Well, it was 3 cards, and I saw this one, and it was stickered for $50. And I don't need to look this up to know that for this card for $50, and regardless of what the grade is, it's at least something to stop and think about. It's a high number from 1970 Topps Willie Mays. It's in a PSA 4. Is it the best centered? No. Does it have the best corners? For a PSA 4, it's not too bad. I mean, are the corners great? No. But it's just a fantastic looking example. It's one of those that, as you look at it from your position, wherever you may be, however far away from the screen you may be, is just a card that presents incredibly well. So I saw that one immediately. It's one of those that I don't even need to look up. I just know that this looks absolutely fantastic, and $50 for it, it just seems way too cheap. So that was something that I was like, yeah, I have to take a look at that one. This one was stickered for even less. And again, it's just one of those that I look at it and I'm like, man, something about that is just not just doesn't seem right. Like I need to get this one too. It's a 73 tops Hank Aaron in the PSA 4. A bit more off-centered than I would typically like. But at a 4, you're gonna have to pick and choose kind of what you're going to sacrifice here. And the corners on it are fine. The registration on it is fine. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go for this one as well. This was the piece de resistance, if you will, of the deal. So along with the 2 cards for Mike and those 2 cards for myself, for some reason these 55 errands just keep coming back to me. Among all the vintage cards I've picked up over my time as a dealer, this is probably the one that I have most frequently acquired. I've had PSA 1s and 2s for the most part to this point. This is the highest graded example I have seen of it. It's a more recently graded example too. I would guesstimate that this was sometime back in middle to late 2020 is when this was submitted for grading based on the cert number here. And it is an absolutely beautiful example of the second year Hank Aaron card. Just fantastic centering. I'll tell you right now, it looks just as good in person as it does on the camera. Why is it a 4? There's nothing that really jumps out right to mind. But again, I'm not going to sit here and try to criticize the card or scrutinize it. Why don't I just say that it is a beautiful example of the card and leave it at that, right? So this was one of those that, again, I thought that he had it on the low end of what I've kind of seen VCP-wise for these. And of course, bundling things together and making the trade and getting out of the Gibson too. I gave up a little bit more than I would typically want to give up for something like this, but being able to kind of move out of that Gibson that I didn't necessarily want to have anymore because I was disappointed in it to get something that I'm extremely confident in and something that I don't mind having in my showcase. 100% worth it to me. And then building the rapport and the connection with the dealer is always a fantastic thing, right? Like making the friendships and knowing that, when we see each other in the future, we know each other's names now, and on my way out, they wish me a safe drive home. That was really cool too. Just we're both there to do business, but there's so much more to the hobby, and it's people like this gentleman. Again, no names. I don't know if they want to have their name said or not, but it's what really makes going to these shows so much fun is interacting with the people. You hear this all the time with the nationals or any of the large shows. Any national that you go to, like every single year, you're going to hear, oh, it's about the people. It's about the people. It really is. I'm telling you, it really is. The people is one of the best parts, if not the best part of the show. So, that was a mouthful, wasn't it? All right. Let's recap the remainder of the show now that I've gone into the stories behind my pickups. Let's go to the show floor review. I've already kind of alluded to this, so we'll breeze through this fairly quickly. It is very basketball heavy. It is very Cincinnati sports heavy. Saw a lot of Joe Burrows. They were priced around what a lot of them were priced for at the time of the Super Bowl, at the kind of the peak of Burrow prices. Some have come down a little bit, but a lot of people are playing into this game of saying that they're going to go back up when the season starts again. Heard that a lot today. Again, we'll talk about that more in the takeaway section, but just pretty much everything I said before. A lot of basketball, a lot of Cincinnati. So what was hot and what was not? Ooh, man, there's a lot to discuss here. Saw a lot of people inquiring about the wax that was there. I had a little bit of wax at my table actually today, or yesterday, I should say. And a lot of people just not willing to pay the price on a lot of this wax. I think it's still, wax prices have not really decreased in the way that singles prices has. Like they don't match up still. And I don't know what it's going to take to change that at this point. I figured with the market softening that wax prices would also soften. soften, excuse me. To some extent they have, but for the most part, they really haven't. Uh, and that's what I'm kind of seeing more and more, that the wax is very slow to decline. And I don't know exactly what it will be that will change that. So wax was both hot and not hot at the same time, where in the sense that a lot of people were inquiring about it, but they weren't necessarily trying to make those purchases happen, if that makes sense. Um, what was what was hot also was just the rare stuff. Your parallels, your numbered stuff. The hate for base was very real at this show, from what I saw. People were showing me their pickups too, because I like to see what people are buying as well. It gives me a sense of what the pulse of the hobby is and what people are actually interested in buying right now. Didn't see too many base rookies as maybe I've seen in the past. And there was a lot of different color and parallels at this show, in the showcases that I could see. Made sense. Uh, but yeah, so that pretty much tells you what was hot and what was not hot in the same sense there. So let's go to the takeaways, kind of my final thoughts on the show. So how I like to do it is one thing I liked, one thing I didn't like, and one thing I liked to end the show. So one thing that I did like was people are willing to wheel and deal. And I've used this one before. You're like, oh man, that's cliche, right? Well, it's true. And it's becoming more and more common that I see where people are being flexible. I think to some extent buyers are still surprised by this. I had a gentleman who he was reluctant to tell me that he sold cards as well for a living. And once I sell you a card, it's yours to do whatever you want. If you wanted to go try to flip it for double your money, good luck. If that's what you want to do with it, it is yours. You paid the money for it. I got the money that I wanted to get for it. I don't have to agree to sell anything at any certain price. So, you go ahead and do what you want at that point, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, so we were trying to talk about it, and I made him an offer. I told him what my price was. Uh, he seemed a bit reluctant. He was interested, but I guess it seemed like he was a little timid to tell me his offer, because I guess he didn't want to insult me. It was for 80% of my asking price, which by no means is absurd, I don't think. I had something stickered at 250, and I was willing to knock it down to 200 for him, and he told me I'd probably be closer to 200. So I asked him, would you do 220, meet in the middle? And eventually I caved in and I gave it to him for 200. I would have taken 200 from the beginning, but of course, we both have the same goal. Like, he's going to try to get it for as little as possible. I'm going to try to get the most for it that I can. So I can always drop down to 200 later if I need to. We made the deal very quickly after that. And it just goes to show you that people will be willing to wheel and deal with you. So if you're approaching a table at a show, and if you're still watching this after 28 minutes and you have the patience to sit through my ramblings, definitely, whenever you see someone and you try to make a deal with them, push for as much as you can. You don't want to make an absurd offer, of course, where it kind of shuts down the the negotiations right away. But I think that still 70 to 80% of asking price is more than fair. I would never be uh, shy to make an offer like that. The worst they can say is no. And at that point, if anyone's really upset about that at that point, I think it's kind of on them, in my opinion. Uh, what is something that I didn't like? Well, I've alluded to this a couple times now. Things are starting to be priced in speculation mode once again. And it's a very dangerous path, I would say, um, because it's similar to what we see with the reason that wax is so high. I think is because people speculate in kind of a Pandora's box situation. So a good example, I'm going to bring this card back here, is Cortland Sutton. Now, I could tell you right now that, oh, well, Russell Wilson's going to be there this year. He's going to have the best quarterback he's ever had in the fold in Denver. He should do really well. This is going to be a big year for him. I think his cards are going to go up. And that is what I would hear from most people. Am I going to hold this card and wait for it until then? Well, not by design. This card is going to go up in my store not too long after I hit stop record on this video. And the reason for that is a lot of these cards now are being priced in a way where they are going up in prediction of what is going to happen rather than what is actually happening. So, for example, Russell Wilson, ever since the trade rumors started with him really into last season, I've seen people reluctant to move their Russell Wilsons, or they've been kind of just bumping the price up now that he is like rumored to be traded. So they keep bumping this price up. Now that he's actually been traded, though, nothing has changed. Like, he went to a situation that I think is going to be good for him. I think that he will do very well in Denver. I like the match. I think it's a good fit for him. But it's an example where people are saying, oh, well, he's going to do this and this and this. And then now you're starting to see guys like a Jerry Jeudy or a KJ Hamler or even Cortland Sutton. Their values are starting to go up because people are speculating what is going to happen to them as a result of having Russell Wilson there. And it's kind of building into this. And even if these guys do succeed, I don't know if the prices will really change, because right now history is telling us that they're not really changing. The same thing happened in the run up to the Super Bowl, both Stafford and Burrow. People kept saying, oh, well, the prices are going to go up. They're going to go up. I have not seen a real big change in a lot of Stafford prices from the cards that I've been looking at. Most of the asking prices have remained about the same. He just signed a big extension with the Rams. He's won a Super Bowl now. I'm not seeing too much change. And it really goes for anything. If you want to even date this back to last summer with Ronald Acuna Jr., I tried to buy several Acuna cards, and a lot of people kept saying the same thing. Well, he's going to come back from injury. I'm looking to buy now and trying to buy low. There's been some dip with Acuna prices overall from what I've seen, but for the most part, there hasn't been too much that I would attribute to his injury. A lot of the dip in prices just has to go and tie into the general dip in the market from what I have seen. So it's something that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, is that now anytime anybody speculates on something, I'm hearing the same thing of like a Zion and pretty much any prediction that people are making right now, it seems to be driving prices. And when you move into a market that is more based on speculation and what people think will happen, people will lose a lot of money. People are going to get burned. It's not something I like to see. It makes it a little bit more difficult for buying on my end too, which is something that, kind of sucks for me personally, but it's just an observation. Something that I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over. It's just something I wanted to make a note of, and I didn't want to take away from my positives. Last takeaway that I'll have for today is people seemed willing to learn. There were a lot of cards that people were asking me to kind of educate them on that were in my showcase. They weren't necessarily ready to pull the trigger on it and buy it, but they wanted to at least learn. They were asking these questions. I think that is so valuable and so overlooked that even if you're not going to walk away from the table with a new card, or even to sell a card to me where what you gain from our discussion is some kind of currency or a piece of cardboard, regardless of which side of it you fall on. Just learning about the different cards and learning about the different sets, asking dealers about the questions and kind of sitting down with them. I guess standing with them and making those conversations and learning, it is so valuable in the hobby. It's something that, if you see a card in the future that catches your eye or you're curious about it, and the dealer seems someone that you can approach, ask those questions. I think it will go a long way. I know that I've started doing it a bit more just from learning from other people, and it's given me some new insights into some sets or some ideas that maybe I didn't necessarily have before. Just expanding your horizons, getting new ideas, communication is just such a key to growing our hobby and also enhancing your own hobby. So that is it for me. Almost 35 minutes, but again, what did you expect? That's my videos in a nutshell these days. Let me know what you thought of the show down below in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics I discussed and also the cards I picked up. Till then, take care, stay safe, be kind.